And the gap is the distance between this ideal version of whatever it is. It could be ourselves and the actual version that we perceive to be, or the reality of it. And so what we do is we work to close the gap. So it's some combination and balance between making the desired changes that you would like to see in your life, and also realizing that you probably have more of that ideal life going on than you realize.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Life Inner Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome lives. I am joined on this episode by Polish Peter. What's up, dude?
Hey, man. So I'm looking forward to this particular episode because if you notice, as you're going to be watching this episode, there's only Wojo on the camera, not me.
Yeah.
So he tried to go.
It's a much better looking crowd here than usual, I got to tell you.
Tried to go around me and record an episode without me. Now, thankfully, we had an amazing guest who made that episode fun because I think otherwise people would be falling asleep. But it's a really cool freaking episode. I mean, she talks about some really great things.
Yeah, we got Dr. Natalie Christine, who I've known for quite some time now. She is a clinical psychologist, and she actually is on the faculty at Harvard. She's been featured in all kinds of news channels and media. I've seen her on television, all kinds of she's really done very well for herself. And the reason is because she's so good at helping people with psychology and helping them live better lives. And so in this episode, we get into a lot of things about, if you're not happy with your life, what are some of the things you can do to create a better life? How can you change your perspective? How can you start to look at that gap differently? How can you use goal setting in a way? She has a proprietary, she has her own acronym for goal setting that we're going to get into, the secrets to a successful life. There's so much in this episode. I can't wait to get into it, man.
Yeah, let's go. Break out your notepad and start taking notes.
Yep, you might listen to this one more than once. Dr. Natalie Christine. Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome to Life Inner Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome, amazing lives. Now, a huge part of that is how you view your life, how you think about life, your mindset, your perspective. And this is why I am so excited to have my friend on the line. And Natalie, how long, was it 20 years ago now that
it's got to be 20 years.
We're totally dating ourselves here. But, we have on the line Dr. Natalie Christine, who is an amazing person, but even more than that, she's a super just wise, knowledgeable authority on psychology. She has, I don't want to give it all away. Natalie, tell people about yourself and what you do.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It is so great to catch up with you after all these years. So I am a clinical psychologist. I'm actually a clinical health psychologist by training, and I've been doing therapy. I've been a psychotherapist for about 14 years, but I've been working mostly in academic practice for most of that time, a little bit of private practice and consulting. But in academic practice, I also do a lot of teaching and instructing and training. I train our students how to do therapy, and so that's a really rewarding part of my job. My approach to therapy is a very active one. So while you might think about therapy as, a traditional talk therapy where you would have a person in the room or on video, and there would just be a lot of talking going on. And obviously there's talking, but what we're really doing is I'm really listening for clues in the words that you are using. It clues me into your mindset. It clues me into the things that you're thinking, and how we think about anything impacts the way we experience that thing. It's going to impact how we feel. It's going to impact the decisions that we make. It's going to impact the goals that we set. So whether I'm working with someone and they're experiencing bouts of depression, whether I'm working with someone and they experience anxiety, anything kind of across the board, I'm always listening for the ideas that they hold, the assumptions that they're making, the predictions that they're making, and looking for ways in which some of those might be getting in the way of what they're trying to achieve. And then we can work with that. We can correct, we can change that.
That's fascinating. And what I love is, and at the same time, acknowledging the complexity of this. And we were talking prior to us starting recording here, is like the way people kind of view things. And you just said it way more eloquently than I could have. Like, it has such an impact on every single part of our lives. How do people though, like, I've heard this from people that have like, hey, either they went through something traumatic, or they just feel like they're wired that way, or they feel like they are at the beginning stages of knowing that they're just super unhappy, but they don't know what to do. Like, how do you start to unpack this for somebody who just realizes they don't feel good. They're not looking forward to life. They're not, well, I don't want to say they're not looking, they're not hopeful for a better life. They're kind of just eking their way through life. Where does somebody start to like understand this better?
Right. Oh, it's a great question. It's such an important question. I think there are techniques that you can use on yourself. I am obviously in the business of working with people to help them through this process, and to give them the tools and the techniques and the tactic that they can then apply in their own life. But it does require some self-reflection. It really requires having an interest and some curiosity about yourself, asking some of those questions like, how did I get here? And if I'm unhappy, how can I make it different? How can I make it better? And, what my work involves is empowering people to do that in their lives. So, if you've come to this point where you're like, wow, is this all there is? Right? I've done X, I've done Y, I've achieved all of the things that I set out to achieve, and yet here I am, and I'm still not fulfilled or satisfied. That can be a really like jarring place to be, because like, what else is there? And then, I might ask that person to kind of walk me through, well, what did you expect it to be like at this point? What were you hoping for? Where's the gap? Where's the gap between how you always thought it would be, or how you always thought it should be, and how it actually is? So it's like this ideal version of your life versus the actual version of your life. And the greater the gap, the greater the distress. Whatever type of distress. It could be depression, anxiety, anger, shame, disappointment, a sense of failure, right? So all those things that are really, really very unpleasant to feel lives in that gap. And the gap is the distance between this ideal version of whatever it is. It could be ourselves and the actual version that we perceive to be, or the reality of it. And so what we do is we work to close the gap. And, is the gap ever entirely closed? Probably not. I think there's always a little bit of gap. And that's one of the things that keeps us striving for more and moving forward and growing. But we do want to try to close it. We do that one of two ways, and usually a combination of both. One is, making this version of my, like, actual version of my life more like what I imagined it could be, or what I imagine it could be. Working to make change in that direction. And also, shifting this ideal version so that it's more in line with the reality of our life, of our actual life. And we call that acceptance. So it's some combination and balance between making the desired changes that you would like to see in your life, and also realizing that you probably have more of that ideal life going on than you realize.
So this is, you said so much there that I was taking notes here. I think certainly I can speak for myself. Like, I've been in that point where, I'd have a goal and I'd achieve it. And then I'd be like, okay, like, now what? Like, I thought this was going to be completely different. Like, I'm sure that's common. And so is that, what do you attribute that to? Is it just as humans, like, we're designed to just get there and be like, okay, we just create these unrealistic expectations, or is there something within us that is just constantly searching, or what do you attribute that to?
A couple of different things. And you're absolutely right. We're wired really in the pursuit of those things, these things that we're striving to achieve. We're actually wired to experience more reward in the effort. We don't think about it that way. We think that when we get there, that's when we'll be rewarded. That's when we'll experience that rush and reward, like, I did it. But you're absolutely right. For the most part, for most of us, I think we've had this experience where you work and you work and you work and you get there and you're like, is that it? You're like, right. Okay, woo, but really it was the pursuit of that kept us engaged and interested and like optimistic and forward moving, and we're actually wired to experience reward for that effort and in that pursuit. And there's a survival reason for that. I mean, our ancestors, needed to feel that motivation to hunt and gather food and move the tribe across, the land, right? So in search of this of something better, right? So in some ways, we're just sort of biologically programmed to have that experience. But then I think there's a psychological aspect to it too. It is about the expectation. It is about this idea that will be better than this. That when I get there, that will be better. And so we often get a little disappointed when we get there. It's a little underwhelming because we have had an expectation of something, but the reality is something maybe just a little bit different. And again, there's a gap. There's a gap between what we expected that to feel like or be like versus what it actually is.
So do you think, with that being said, and I don't want to misphrase you, but what I'm hearing is almost focusing on the journey and enjoying the journey is really the more rewarding of the two, like either the getting it or pursuing it?
Absolutely. And you hear that. That's what we talk about.
Like, I know, but it seems like so
the journey,
cliche,
it's not the destination, right?
Right, but now coming from a trained psychologist, to me, it has really weight now. Before, you just thought it was some fortune cookie thing. Like, this is legit now, though.
Yeah, right. And it's true. It's like, you want to focus on the process and not the outcome, and the journey, not the destination. But that's precisely why we're actually wired to experience more reward in the pursuit of a goal than in the achieving of the actual goal. There is some reward in that. I'm not going to minimize it ultimately, okay. But I think obviously when we achieve the thing that we've been working for, we do appreciate it. It's just not as overwhelming as we maybe hoped, expected, or anticipated it.
Right.
It's the anticipation of the reward that actually motivates us to pursue it, not the reward itself, not the end goal.
Gotcha. You know what? And as you were speaking, I thought of something I see in my own life was like, I know some people that are constantly unhappy, but I shouldn't say that. They're constantly looking for the achievement of that goal to make them happy. They think, when I have the car, when I have the house, and it's not just possessions, but when I'm 20 pounds lighter or whatever. Mm-hmm. And what I'm wondering to myself is no, you probably something needs to change in the way you're viewing this, because you're going to hit that thing and then it's not going to be as good, most likely. Is it what you expect?
Mm-hmm. Right. And then it kind of ties back into the very first question that you asked, which is when you get to this place where you've done all of these things that you have strived for, you've achieved all of these possessions, perhaps, or acquired all of these possessions, and you look around and you realize that you're not happy yet, that it's not enough. And I think it really does cultivate that mindset of not enough, and I will be happy when. And the goal for that is sort of out there, but the goal line just keeps getting pushed further and further out. And so you begin to develop a belief that it's just not going to happen for me, that no matter how hard I try, it's not going to matter. I'm not going to be happy. But maybe that's because the expectation is misaligned with reality. The reality is that happiness has been there all along. You've just missed it because you were looking somewhere else, or you were looking at it differently. And so a big part of the work I do is just shifting that perspective so that you can be more focused on right here, right now. This is where it is. This is where it's at. And there is happiness, and there is contentment, and there is fulfillment right here today.
That makes a huge amount of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that when people are, for instance, setting goals,
mm-hmm.
would you say that really their goal should be more along an action-based measure versus a results-based measure? And you know what I mean by that? Hey, I want to close 10 deals versus I'm going to make 10 sales calls today, or something like that, results-based or action-based. Would that have any, am I totally off in this, or does that make any sense?
No, I love talking about goal setting. Because I think we get this wrong sometimes. I think, and I have an algorithm that I like to use when it comes to goal setting. But to answer your specific question, it's like all of the above. It depends on the person. It depends on the goal. It depends on the type goal that you're trying to achieve or what it is that you're moving towards. And so it's almost like both. You want to be focused on what am I ultimately trying to achieve here, but see it more as like a direction that I'm headed with like much smaller sub goals. Like I'm a big fan of like micro goal setting. I mean, like teeny tiny goals that are moving you one step closer to where you ultimately envision yourself being. But in some ways, I may not even want you to get too super attached to that end goal, that end result, because there's going to be a lot of movement along the way. And so being able to shift and maybe modify and adapt your approach or adapt the direction that you're headed in light of whatever new information you're gathering. So the moment you start moving towards a goal, you have more information about that than you had before. And so what do you do with that information? Well, you might have to refine some things. You might have to refine your approach. You might have to refine the specific actions that you're taking on a day to day. You might realize it's going to take a lot longer than you thought. You don't actually have the resources to do it, that gym memberships are really expensive. So you know, like you might bump up against barriers. And even in ourselves, we might think, oh gosh, this is going to be super easy. You go to do it and you're like, wow, this is really super hard. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you have failed or that you're not going to be able to do it or that you should just quit. It just means you now have more information about the pursuit of that goal than you had before. And it's okay if you need to refine it or iterate or modify it. So I really am a big fan of actually flexible. So you have some room to flex and learn. Really what you're doing is just learning along the way. You're learning more about yourself. You're learning more about the process. You're learning more about what you're capable of. You're learning more how to problem solve around barriers. So all of those things are embedded in this process that you miss if you're only focused on the end result.
Hey, we'll get right back to our episode. Well, I want to tell you about something really quickly here in a moment, and that is our Get a Life Getaway event. This is an event we've been doing going on 15 years now. We've had almost 10,000 people go through it, and it's an incredible event. If you want to transform your life, if you don't have the life you dream about, the one that you know you deserve and the one you worked hard for, and you are sick of kind of being sick and tired and not having all the things and experiences in your life that you know are waiting for you, then you need to get to this event. I'll just tell you right now, this event will transform absolutely everything in your life. We will take you hand in hand and walk you through step by step the process to create your ideal life in every single area because they all fit together. This is a proven formula. We've been doing this so long now. We've tweaked it, we've refined it, we've perfected it, and we would love for you to be there. Peter and I teach these personally. We do not delegate these to anybody else. This is part of our vision. We love pouring into people, and we'd love to see you at an event. Now, to make it even more enticing for you, that even in of itself, it's awesome, is we're going to give you, because you're a loyal podcast listener, 50% off ticket price. So when you go to lifeinair.com, that's lifeinair.com, you'll go to the events page, you'll see the Get a Life Getaway. When you check out, after you choose the specific event you want to do, and by the way, we do about a half dozen of these events per year, 3 of the Get a Life Getaway and 3 of the Business Builder Workshop. You simply go to that checkout page, and when you're ready to check out, there's a promo code you will enter. It's called podcast. Use the promo code podcast for 50% off the Get a Life Getaway, and we will see you there. Man, this is all tying together for me because I can see how all these other things that you never even thought of when you originally set out towards this accomplishment, like start popping up, and you're learning, you're growing, you're expanding, you're, finding ways around obstacles, over, under them. And it sounds like that there's a lot of fulfillment and reward that can come just from that.
Just from that, the challenge of sort of figuring it out as you go, and I'm okay with setting like hard goals or, big goals, but like the day to day, like, like operation of that, like that can also be, I don't want to use the word fun, but I think sometimes it can be fun, the learning, the figuring it out as you go. The challenge of that can be rewarding and interesting and engaging. You don't want to miss that either. You might hear about like SMART goals, and that's sort of the acronym that's out there. It's been pretty standard for a while. There's things about that I love, but I have a version that I call just the ABCs of goals.
Let's hear yours, yeah.
A, B, C, S. So the first is, what is the affirmative. Affirmative. So what I mean by that is something that you're working towards, something that you're moving towards as opposed to something you're trying to get rid of. So, for example, if if someone was had a goal to, lose weight or have, it wouldn't be about what it is that they're getting rid of, but really it's about what they're gaining. So that's how I think of this idea of having an affirmative goal in which you're moving towards something as opposed to moving away from something.
So can I ask a clarification question here? So
when
you say affirmative, does that mean, let's say somebody, instead of saying, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds, like saying, I want to feel more healthy and vibrant? Is that in the phrasing?
Yeah, I want to gain. Yeah, I want you to flip it on that side. Like, what is it that you're looking to gain?
Okay.
What is it you're looking to gain? And also, there's an affirmation of identity in this process as well. So you can use that in a couple of different ways. You can think about affirmative in terms of sort of the positive gain that you're getting instead of the thing that's being taken away or that you're losing or that you're restricting yourself from. And partially because when we're working on our goals, we're like tracking progress. Like we have a way that we're kind of trying to keep track of things. And so one of the things that we might be trying to keep track of is, how confident do you feel today? What's your energy level like today? And so I'm having people focus more on the things that they're moving towards and sort of assessing themselves on that, on that perspective versus the negative thing that we're moving away from. So I just don't want them, focusing so much on the depression symptoms. I'd rather them focus more so on, how energetic you feel today, how optimistic you feel today. And it's the same scale, right? So if it's a 0 to 10, I'm just having people look at it from the perspective of gain or forward, or something that's positive. But the affirmation part is also the affirming a part of your identity that you want to be, the person that you want to be. So setting goals is different than like action goals or outcome goals. These are like identity goals. And aligning your actions with the person that you imagine yourself to be, that you're trying to be, that you want to be. And that's one of the ways that we really harness like motivation and acting in ways that are consistent with this type of person. So I think about that in terms of affirming identity goals. So, like, how do you envision yourself? I want to be the type of person that can walk into a room and speak in front of a crowd of people without a bunch of anxiety. Okay, well, we can work towards that. But I would want for somebody to envision themselves as that type of person and then act in ways that type of person would act. It's almost like acting as if. I'm a big fan of acting as if, which is not a fake it till you make it, because I don't think you're faking anything, but you're, acting in ways that are consistent with the type of person you want to be.
I love that.
So okay, B, yeah. Right? B is behavioral. So this applies in the work that I do, because a lot of people will tell me they want to feel better. I mean, what are your goals here? Well, I want to feel better. Okay, well, that's great. That's a great goal. A lot of people want to feel better. They want to have more energy. They want to feel more motivated. They want to feel more positive. Okay, those are feelings. Those are great. I would want for you to have those. But if you had those, if you were feeling better, what would you be doing that you're not doing now? What would that look like to me? How would I see that? How would you see that you were feeling better? How would you know that was the case? And we can use our behavior as an anchor for that. So the B is behavioral or observable, something that you can see yourself doing. That, if you were feeling better, or if you had this thing, that what would that look like in your life? And the reason why this is important is that we get really good and important feedback about how we're doing by what we're doing. So, I rely heavily on behavior in terms of setting behavioral goals and behavioral targets, because, like I said, we get a lot of messages of feedback essentially about how we're doing based on what we're doing. And when we do better, we feel better, and vice versa.
Do you also see that, let's say someone isn't feeling really good, they could just use the behavior as a way to kind of jumpstart that so like, hey, I don't want to, but I'm going to go work out and hope I feel better after.
Yeah. Again, this is all about motivation, right? And a lot of people will wait until they feel like doing the thing before they do the thing. Well, we know from science, right, that sometimes you have to do the thing in order to feel like doing the thing. So you kind of back door kind of your
Right.
way into it, or you reverse engineer the process. So if you want to feel a certain way, how would you, what would you be doing if you felt that way? And then just go do those things. And that's how you begin to feel that way that you imagine feeling. Yeah. So it works. This is the basis for one of the most effective non-medication interventions for depression out there, which is called behavioral activation. And it's getting people doing things basically to get to jumpstart the nervous system, or something that has been a little underactivated or understimulated for a while.
Got it. Powerful. All right.
C. Okay, so A, B, and C.
Yep.
C, this goes back to what is the changeable, like setting goals that are flexible, modifiable, and adaptable in the face of new information in that pursuit. So I think sometimes we can have these rigid goals. We set a goal. This is what it is. I'm going to get there. I'm going to do or die, right? But sometimes, and then if we don't, then we fail. And, I'm applying a growth mindset to all of this, and now there's no such thing as failure. But what does that mean? It means that, you're learning along the way. And if your only goal ever is to learn something, then you'll never fail. You'll never fail. So I'm either going to learn that this is harder than I thought. I'm going to learn something about myself. I'm going to learn what I'm capable of. I might learn what I'm not so good at, but I'm learning the whole time. And if that's my goal, then you're successful each and every time you set out to do it.
Yeah, that kind of gets back to what you were saying before, is like, what you're focusing on is going to determine how you kind of feel about it. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about, so we have this gap in our lives, right? Like for some people it's big, some people it's small. Do you feel like, and what separates somebody from, I'll give you an example. Like, when I was bodybuilding back in the day, like I wasn't comparing myself to the guys in the gym. I'm looking at the guy, the pros mm-hmm. who were like Mr. Olympia, and I'm like, that's what I want to be like. Mm-hmm. And yet I never got for myself, like it drove me, even though I know in my mind that there's no chance I'm ever going to look like that. Like I just know it's not me. But I didn't let it upset me. Conversely, I've seen people that are like it's probably the same size gap, maybe even, I don't know. But they looked at it differently, and it kind of consumed them, and it made them feel like worse. What's the difference there?
Well, I think a big difference, and again, I'm going to just be speculating based on my experience, is a level of self-acceptance from the start. So this idea of this is who I am, and I'm okay with that. And this is what I'm striving towards. And, on some level, I know that that's probably not going to happen for me, but I'm okay with that because I'm okay with who I am. But that's not going to stop me from striving and from moving in the direction of this, this image that I might have, or this goal that I might have for myself. And I think sometimes when we're starting down that path from a place of, where we're, don't have a lot of self-acceptance, or if our self-esteem is a little bit lower, we feel like that's the thing that will fill us. That's the thing that will make us happy. But I'm not starting from that place. I'm not starting from a place of contentment, satisfaction, and happiness. Then I think you might be setting yourself up to really feel quite devastated and empty when that doesn't come to fruition.
Got it.
So it's not always true that you need to be deeply dissatisfied with life to make changes. That can be a reason, that can be a motivator. But I think, coming from a place of self-compassion is also a perfectly acceptable place to begin to make changes in your life as well. You can be satisfied with your life and with yourself just as you are today, and still want to make changes and still strive for more and better. And I think that is also part of what motivates us. I also think sometimes when we're talking about motivation, what we really mean is inspiration. We really want to feel inspired. And I think that's a big part of goal setting. I think that's a big part of striving. I think that's a big part of our mindset. Is really, I just completely lost what I was saying. I hate when that happens. I don't know where I was going with that. It was so good too.
Motivation versus inspiration.
Oh, yeah. Talking about what makes a really, a great life. Like, how do you get to the place where you're building a life that you love? And I think being inspired is such a big, like an emotional motivation. I think that feeds into like passion, and I think of the three things that I think the three key ingredients as I was thinking about this question after we chatted a bit, which is, what are the three things that I think makes a life worth living? There's some science around this too. This is the realm of positive psychology. They study like what makes life worth living. And I think it's passion, people, and purpose. And I think all of those things kind of work together in combination with one another. So it's the people in our lives that fuel our passion. And we can be passionate about the people, and we can be passionate about a purpose. And our purpose, all of these things sort of overlap with one another. And at the top for me is passion. I think it's about being excited about your life, even if it's not exactly how you always envisioned it would be. And that's living with that narrow gap, I think, is just being passionate and excited about the life right now.
Right. This is kind of getting back to the gap and having, like, so for instance, when the example I brought up of having, looking at like Mr. Olympia and something that's like that, a huge, whether it's unattainable goal. Have you seen, and by corollary, like, have you seen people that have these huge goals? Are they, and this is a very broad generalization, I know you can't probably apply to everybody, but in general, do you see people that have these huge goals more or less happy than people who have small goals, who are kind of like, just like, like the simpler life? Because, before we started recording, we started talking about achievers, right? Achievement. Are those people really just masking something deep within themselves? They're trying to prove their worth, or am I, like,
yeah. Okay. Well, it probably just, first of all, it depends on the person, but in general, like if I was going to be general about it, the S in that algorithm is for small. I do think small goals.
Yeah.
And moving in sort of like this in a baby step kind of fashion towards, and really truly like appreciating that process, allowing yourself to feel the reward in the pursuit or the effort. So each and every one of those workouts that you were doing in the direction of that big goal. And big goals are great too. I think there are people who want to shoot for the stars. And I think if that's your style, then go for it. But I also think that there is, what is it about that? If you're thinking about like Ronnie Coleman, what is it about that achievement that really inspires you? What is it? Is it the, I don't know, is it the status? Is it the title? Is it just the culmination of all that work, being able to say that you did it? What is it? What does that represent to you? And what is it about that you could work towards? Like realistically, what is it about that in your life that you could work towards creating, building? That's one thing that I would sort of adjusting around like the mindset of goal setting. I would also say that the most successful people I've ever met in life also have this expectancy bias. And so what is the expectancy bias? Also builds into motivation and the confidence that you have in your ability to achieve the things you set out to achieve. So I call this a change mindset. So, and it's really a belief in your ability to achieve the things you set out to achieve. And the most successful people I've met in life didn't always know how they were going to get there. They just knew that they would. They just had this belief about their ability to do it, and that they would figure it out along the way. And there really wasn't a lot of doubt that they wouldn't eventually get there. And then they did, or they found something else along the way that was equally as satisfying, or maybe even better. And our confidence around our ability to make these kinds of changes in our lives is built on previous successes, and how successful we've been at that in the past. And this could be in different areas of our life, different domains. So maybe I'm very, very successful academically and professionally, but like relationships, not so much. So you can have more or less confidence in these different domains of life based on your success in those goals that you've set. And and when you've set out to achieve goals and you haven't, then you begin to build a belief that you're not capable of doing that that's not possible for you. And that might impact your motivation and your willingness to set more goals going forward. This is why I emphasize the small goals, because a series of small goals, small wins, make a big difference in how you believe, what you believe about your ability to achieve the things you set out to achieve. And this could be micro stuff. This is day-to-day stuff. These are your to-do list. These are the things that you say, this is what I'm going to do today, right? And you begin checking those off. That's what this is. That's what this mindset is building. Which, okay, I made a list of things to do and I checked a bunch of them off, or I checked all of them off. And it builds this idea that I have about myself that I'm able to do that consistently.
That makes so much sense. And so and basically those small wins start building your confidence that now you can take with you towards the next thing. And it's just a snowball effect versus like setting a huge goal, you fail, and maybe even you accomplish something, but you're not going to have built that same level of confidence and of your abilities.
Right. Exactly. And so I think this is, where we can pull from like growth mindset, which is why this idea of success versus failure, having that be like an either or, can be so problematic, because it's also just our perception of those. So, everyone looking at you might be like, wow, this is an incredible success. And you're like, well, I don't see it that way, because this is what I had actually set out to achieve. And I didn't get that. I didn't get there. I just got this. And people are like, what? That's pretty amazing. And you're downplaying it, minimizing it, because it wasn't, it's Y instead of X. So it is being able to like let go of what you maybe had initially thought it was going to be and fully embrace what it is.
Mm-hmm. That's super powerful. I could talk for hours on this. I want to respect your time though. And so we'll have to have you back on here. Although I got to tell you, you are probably the most challenging person I've ever had to schedule with for the Life Internet Show, just so you know.
I know, it's so true.
Well, I mean, you're everywhere. Like I see you on the news, and you got your positions and your practice and all this other kind of stuff, which is super awesome. By the way, tell people where they can find out more about you and learn what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I am, I have a website. It's drnatalieChristine.com. I'm also on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I think I'm on Twitter too. So I'm a little kind of all over the place. You're right. But I love, I'm an advocate for mental health. I try to speak about it as often as possible. My goal and mission has always been to reduce the stigma attached to seeking treatment for mental health issues. And I do that through advocacy and education. So any opportunity that I have to speak about mental health and wellness, I'm going to take it. So I really appreciate being able to come on and chat with you about it too, Jason.
Well, thanks for being on the Life Internet Show, Nat.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.
Dude, I gotta tell you, that was such a smoother episode than when you're on the show, man. You're always interrupting and bumbling around. Like, this went pretty smoothly. I mean, I don't know. The listeners might have to, maybe we can get some votes here. Like, they're gonna.
You know what? I'm thinking there's going to be an uprising happening now.
I think so. They're probably going to be like, don't get rid of Peter. I know. I'm not going to get rid of Peter. Don't worry.
I'll be feeling really stupid if there's crickets now after this thing.
So, dude, like I really enjoyed this episode with her. And, one of the things that like just early on in the conversation, she talks about this gap between the reality of what we're experiencing right now in our life and then where we want to be. And dude, it's so true that and I know everybody on this line has at some point achieved a goal that you're like, okay, well, that's it. Like, that wasn't what I thought it would be. And so, like, I thought it was so insightful and valuable and we've heard this before, but so few of us do it. Like, the gain, the enjoyment is on the path to that goal. You're learning, you're growing, you're pursuing that thing. And that's actually, where most of us miss the enjoyment. We miss the fulfillment of that journey because we're so fixated on, we're not, I'm not gonna be happy until I do this thing or until I accomplish this thing. It's so powerful.
Yeah, because we're so focused on the end result.
Yeah.
And we see this huge gaping gap that's like, how am I ever going to get there? And it's having us be like, depressed or whatever the case may be. Yeah. However, the cool thing about this is the gap is where the magic happens. You know what I mean? You should enjoy the journey. You should look for it. You should, like she talked about how she sets up the different goals. And one of the things that she talked about is that you can adjust, during the process, because you're going to learn something new. You're going to see something different that you didn't see when you first started. So if you're able to adjust and take a different strategy, things like that, all of a sudden that journey becomes a little bit more exciting and not so much stressful. And I guess it also depends how you start looking at it, because, one of the things that she brought up is the whole thing about expectations. We've talked about in this episode, I talk to my students a lot about expectations. The gap creates the expectations, the goal that we have in the expectations. We're like expecting everything all over the place, and when you start looking for the perspective of how do I enjoy this gap, enjoy the journey, your expectations starts to shift such that I think you can actually start to enjoy that journey.
Well, man, I think it's really, and listen, you've probably heard that before. If you're a listener right now, you've probably heard like, hey, it's the thrill of the kill is secondary to the challenge of the chase, like that whole thing. But it's true. And I think if you truly choose to accept that and internalize that and really move forward with that, it gives you just such a different perspective on your journey, like that you can actually enjoy it and feel like you're succeeding along the way instead of only when you've accomplished something. And I want you to think about something here. When you feel like you're succeeding, you are creating a positively reinforcing cycle in terms of your confidence, which again helps you move forward more. And so and she talked about this too. She said she's like a big fan of micro goals, right? And we talk about this like in our events, we talk about like, we call them waypoints and action steps, same exact thing. And as you accomplish these, so let's just play through this. You're moving forward, you're taking steps, you haven't hit your goal yet, right? I'm using air quotes if you're not watching me right now on YouTube. And you're getting more successful, you're learning things, you're getting new information, you're moving forward, you're pivoting, you continue to gain traction, your confidence is going up, which again, further reinforces those decisions to move forward. So you create like some positive momentum to carry you forward, versus the negative emotion that can hold you back when you feel like you're not where you should, air quotes, be, right? And so that's just a really powerful way to view these things, that I think is really, really self-empowering.
All right. Now, I think sometimes the lack of those waypoints / micro goals is what's causing people from being discouraged, not able to reach those goals and feeling, this sucks and those kinds of conversations in their mind, right? Because if you set yourself up, if you're looking to lose, let's say, let go of 50 pounds, right? And she talked about instead of looking to lose something, what am I going to gain out of this, right? So if you set up this huge goal that you haven't maybe achieved yet, and you don't have those micro goals that you're going to go along the way, well, guess what? It's going to take you forever to get there, right? But if let's say you have a goal of having 10 houses and you make an offer and that offer gets accepted, or even just start making phone calls that you weren't able to do before, that's a huge win. Yeah. Celebrate that, right? Look towards that micro goal to be able to move you along the way.
But even more powerful, man, those micro goals keep you from getting overwhelmed and feeling like, your example, you have 50 pounds to lose. That can be really intimidating and discouraging for somebody. Your micro goal of losing 5 pounds is a whole lot more attainable. And so that's super important, and by the way, you kind of alluded to her ABCs of goal setting, which I thought was really cool. We won't go into that. You can listen to that again, but that was great. Again, that was like, affirmation. The affirmative is the A, behavioral is a B, and then changeable is a C. And then she at the end, we talked about the three keys that she thought were pivotal to having a life that you love, which was the passion, which totally agree with, passion and purpose and meaning, all that comes together. People, number 2, which is in life in here, we're all about people, we're about community, we're about helping each other, we're about support. And then third, and progress, right? Moving forward towards something, your potential, what you want to accomplish, what you want to achieve, what you want to experience, have, be, do, all those things. So powerful, man.
Yeah. So who's more passionate on this podcast, me or you?
Oh, dude, right here. Like that.
Sure. Are you sure about that?
And if this
sure about that, Clark?
Isn't just caffeine, man. This isn't just caffeine. This is passion, brother.
This is caffeine, coffee, Red Bull, 5 o'clock, that kind of stuff, right?
I don't know if 5 o'clock.
I'll put together.
Is, but that's okay. That's whatever. Listen, we hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Listen, I know we say this, but I really want you to just pause for a second. We're sharing this stuff with you so that we can help you live a better life, have a better business. And at the end of the day, it's all about really what Natalie talked about: passion, purpose, and people, right? And progress. And so doing something with this is the highest compliment you could give us. The second highest compliment you could give us, it would be to subscribe to this podcast and really, become a subscriber so that you don't miss anything. And this is how we reach more people together, and which, by the way, is helping everybody else be more successful too. We will see you next week, everyone. Take care. Hope you enjoyed the episode.